Hey mamas, and welcome to the Entering Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Bilger, a wife, mom of two, VBAC mama, and doula. Join us every episode to learn from professionals, special guests, and moms just like you, ensuring that you know what you need to know and discover things that you didn't know before. I believe in you. Let's doula this, and let's navigate the transition of entering motherhood together. Hello. In this episode of Entering Motherhood, we chat with Maryn Green, who is a mother of 10, a home birth midwife, and also the co-founder of Indie Birth. Maryn shares insights on trusting the birthing process, the importance of somatic education, and the lessons learned from her own children. This conversation explores intuitive parenting, balancing boundaries with freedom, and challenging conventional norms. Maryn reflects on what it was like and is still like raising a large family while also supporting women through birth, and alongside that, offering resources of encouragement for mothers to trust themselves and encourages us to embrace our own unique journeys. Listen into this episode to get perspective on what it's like being a birth worker, specifically a midwife, and what birth and motherhood has the ability to look like. So with that, let's get this episode started. Hello, and welcome to Entering Motherhood. I'm so happy to have you here today and get this conversation going. So how about you start off by introducing yourself for the listeners?
Hi, thank you. I'm Maryn Green, and I'm a mother to 10 beautiful children ages 22 to 4. I'm also a home birth midwife and just generally a space holder for women in all kinds of ways. Virtually, I have a mama circle, and I run Indie Birth, which is a global organization for birth work, really, and education and radical midwifery. So yeah, I'm a million more things, but that's what comes in this morning.
Yeah. So when did you get into birth work, and where was that kind of with your own motherhood experience?
So my oldest daughter, who just turned 22, was born in the hospital, just kind of standard vaginal birth. And then with our second child, our first son, we chose a home birth. And that was pretty late in the pregnancy, but it was the perfect choice for us. And after he was born at home, I really couldn't stop thinking about and learning about birth in this different way. So I remember having a stack of library books next to my nursing chair. This was 20 years ago. So that was easier than being on the internet. And by the time he was 4 months old, I had begun a midwifery apprenticeship, which is hands-on learning from a midwife. So it's been a good 20 years, and all of their births really have influenced me so much on that journey.
Yeah. So obviously, you have so many of your own personal birth experiences, but also so many experiences that you have been to, in the birth space. But what are some of, your most memorable moments, and when you were kind of getting started in birth work and attending births, what was kind of the most impactful part of that you still keep with you now?
Well, the midwife I began apprenticing with, we were in Chicago, which at the time there was no regulation or legalization of home birth midwives. So essentially, she was considered, an underground midwife. And that did really influence me. I mean, sort of obviously, if anybody knows any of my story, I really don't consider myself a political person, but I think birth is no place for politics. I think women should be able to choose whoever they want, and the state and the government shouldn't be telling women who they can have at their birth. So this was planted in me as a foundational belief as I was working with this midwife, because she was incredible and she was super busy and people loved her and they understood who they were hiring. It's always baffled me that anybody has gotten this idea to, put midwives in a box and put labels on them. But anyway, on like a felt level, the births I attended with her for 3 years really gave me this other foundational belief in the trust of the process. So I did see a few complications during that time, but mostly I just saw birth happen, almost to the point where as a student, it was hard to learn some things because it was just happening organically. So, a baby was born into the birth pool, and I was just kind of still in awe and watching it. And, she'd always give the mom space and it was so gentle. And then maybe later she'd say to me, like, what did you think about that? Like, how did that baby do? And I was kind of like, I don't even know. It just was so natural. I didn't have the clinical understanding at that time. But anyway, I think that was a perfect foundation to be laid because then I could go on and learn all the clinical stuff. But I think I've really been able to keep that with me as a midwife and as a mother with my own births that, occasionally things go off track, but most of the time things really go to the physiological plan of us being mammals. And sure, as a midwife, I know what to look for when that's not happening. But anyway, it's a long way of saying that I know things can happen, but I got a really nice education in normal birth. And that has, carried with me the last 20 years.
Yeah, and how did that relay to your own birthing experiences? What you were learning and seeing with other women and then going through it on the same timeline for
hmm
yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a unique experience. I don't know that many people have it, right? Like, I was pregnant and birthing my next 8 babies really while being a midwife student and then being in my own practice. And, I'll tell you, it's a blessing and a curse in a sense because you can't unsee what you've seen, you can't unlearn what you've learned. And so, I have had my own challenges and my own births, my own fears that have come up as a result of seeing other women birth or seeing how, how their birth went or what happened to them. So, maybe that's the less positive aspect, but the very positive aspect is that I really learned to trust my own body because I saw so many women do it. And many of those women did it through amazing obstacles, right? So, women that have had multiple cesareans, that's not been my personal experience, but I am still always in awe of those women. Or the woman who has her first baby at home, that also wasn't me. So, even though I'm an experienced birther myself, I feel like I've always approached each birth with humility in the sense of what can I learn from this woman? And, that's the addictive part of birth work in a sense is feeling all of that hormonal yumminess when women birth, being in the room and being with them for these triumphant moments. So it definitely has influenced me, in my own births. The moments where you feel like you can't go on or it's too hard. It's harder to say that in a way when you've seen so many women do it, even though we're all so unique in our birth experiences. I think we're all together in it. And I know, my own births, the couple that we have caught on video and the births of other clients, that we've shown over the years on YouTube and in person. I know those births have really influenced women that have had babies or who have hadn't. So many women over the years have said, it just helped to see it. It just helped to see you do it or this woman do it. I didn't know birth could look like that. And I'll, still get emails 7 years later from one of my births saying like, my birth ended up looking just like yours because, I watched it so many times and it was kind of like in my bones and in my blood that it could look like that. So anyway, I think we're all connected. And the internet is another blessing and curse, but being able to see other women birth in these ways that maybe we couldn't have imagined before, I think is a good thing for all of us,
Yeah, that's so
mostly.
true. Yeah, yeah, it's really like that visualization of it. We could tell birth stories, we could read birth stories, that was kind of passed on, just
hmm
different women gathering together, but the use of technology and video and being able to share that nationwide, worldwide, and have that visualization represent it in that way is something that is fairly new and still we're learning how that's impacting and what that's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like at Indie Birth, we have been doing that for a long time. I mean, close to 10 years. We started with birth photos, we would have a birth photographer there, and all of that is pretty normal nowadays. But I think in sharing our own personal videos, so Margot is the co-founder, she has two children. She shared her births online. I think that's really, educated our own clients and encouraged them to do the same. So nobody's forced to share that I've ever worked with, but almost everybody will or
Yeah.
has. They're
Yeah.
excited. They're excited to like add their video to the list. So
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah. What are some other things that you feel are important when preparing for birth that help with really clearing those fears and getting in a mindset for unmedicated birth and for that experience?
There are so many things, so it really depends on the person. Something like ritual and ceremony can be impactful for some women. I was doing a fear release ceremony. I haven't attended a birth in a year. I'm taking some time off, but before that, it was something I was trying out, and that seemed to be really effective for the women that wanted to participate in it. So it was a whole thing, and they burnt their fears, and it was a cool use of a topic that sometimes we shove under the rug. We think often, especially with home birth, that we should be fearless and we shouldn't be afraid of anything. And honestly, that's just not the reality for most women because birth is an unknown, right? Other than that, I would say, my latest passion and probably where the direction that I'm going from here, although it still intertwines with birth work, is really somatic education,
Mm,
which is a fancy way of saying I'm learning how to hold better space and technique and tools for women to be in their bodies, which is both simple and complicated, and it's both old and new. But I hadn't really incorporated that into my work as a midwife in the way that I'm learning now. So I'm in a 3-year training that's really intense. And I'll tell you, it's the most profound work for me this at this point in my life because we all have traumas, we all have things, we all have histories, and it is just so transformative for anybody, but especially a woman who's pregnant. Because if you think about it, learning to feel what's in the body, not ignoring it, and then following what the body wants to do with that energy, no matter what it is, birth trauma, something annoying happened to you today, whatever it is, frees up the system to do what it's supposed to do. So if you think about a pregnant woman, obviously her system has something it is going to need to do. And the more unhindered she can access the energy, the smoother the birth, in theory, should go. And I think it's just so amazing because birth is a somatic experience. Somatic means of the body. So even though birth is mental and emotional and spiritual, it has to happen through this human form. So my mind is just continually blown lately in studying this. And like I said, I want to just focus on offering women that kind of support right now and kind of see where that goes because I think I don't even know the amazing impact it potentially can have on their mothering experiences as well.
Yeah, it is kind of a unique parallel between, like our birthing experience and our own motherhood journey as well. And like it really like when I say like, okay, like, yeah, we're preparing for birth, it's also, preparing you for your motherhood experience because you're learning new techniques and you're learning about your body and you're learning, just to trust your intuition more. And that extends and prolongs into your motherhood experience so much.
Yeah, and like there's a million other ways that all of that ties together from the way we were mothered, the way we were, attached or not as babies. And again, all of the experiences we have live in our bodies. So if you're sort of a normal human right now, in the Western world at least, the body is pretty much ignored from the time we're young. I think the best example most people can relate to, is just having been in school and like eating at a certain time. You eat when they tell you to eat, and you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. So, from a very early age, we're teaching disconnect from the body. And, it's more than apparent when all these women are growing up and having babies. And I would totally put myself in that category as well, and especially for some of my earlier births. So it's a really profound thing to start to dig into that because, like you're saying too, it does affect your mothering and the wounding you might have around your own mother and the way you were parented. There are ways to get to that, so we don't continue the pattern into our role as mother. Certainly all of us have things that we don't want to carry on and things we do. So all of those tools are in the somatic toolbox. And again, I think it's, for me, the choice right now, but there are so many things.
Yeah. What has it been like doing birth work alongside raising children? And how has that kind of tied into your family lifestyle and what you see your vision for in your own motherhood experience?
Well, this is the first time I've really been off call for an extended period in 15 years. So I've been on my own as a midwife for 15 years, and I took a month or two here or there. Truthfully, most of my babies after they were born, I was back attending a birth, some within 3 weeks. I can remember one woman that went into labor early when I had just birthed 3 weeks ago. What was I supposed to do, right? Like, I've been at births 4 days before I've birthed. So that's been my whole experience, is kind of like I don't really know another one. And my children, for the most part, other than this last year, which has been radically different, grew up in this reality of having a mother that was on call. So luckily, my husband and I have arranged our life so that he's always home, he works from home, and that became clear that that was a necessity early on. I really have compassion for women that are studying midwifery or are doulas, and they have to figure out childcare every time the phone rings. I think I would have gone friggin' nuts. So my husband was the one that was home. That was never a problem for me to leave. And my kids did grow up in a unique way, but they didn't know any different, right? So, oh, your birthday's on Saturday. We might have a party. We might not have a party. If we don't have a party, we'll do this other thing, right? Because I never knew where I was going to be. And luckily, unless they, wind up in therapy in their adulthood for it, which is possible, they were very forgiving. They seemed to understand as much as they could, and that was just life. I don't know when I'll be home when I leave. So because my husband is such a rock, I think that was great, right? They had the stability and they weren't, I don't think, missing me. I probably missed them more when I was at births for a long time. They were fine. They had their dad, he was doing stuff with them. But this last year has been so different. And so my three youngest kids, they are, let's see, 7, 5, and 4. They're living a whole different childhood than my older kids did. And my oldest daughter lives here as well, so she's around a lot. And she even notices, she's like, wow, it's so different for them. Like, you're always with them, and they're probably a little too used to that. They need me for absolutely everything.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just so different. Like, I definitely have stuff I need to do every day, but it's flexible and I can change it. And most of the time we're just playing or we're out at the beach. And anyway, it's been a really good rest. I think is great for them to have that experience as well. And I don't know, of course, what I'll do in the future. I kind of can't imagine going back to that right now. And I think in this rest, my body is showing me too how much I needed it and how difficult birth work is. And, I'm not trying to turn anyone off to birth work. In fact, I think it is a soul calling. So there's not much I could really do anyway. But it is extremely taxing and stressful on the nervous system and the entire health system of a person. And yeah, I think that's a different topic about, reforming midwifery and making it something that is sustainable, because I didn't want to keep just like pounding myself into the ground.
yeah, it definitely is one of those things, like being on call and having young children and things like that. But your older children, how do they perceive birth and what do you really, I guess, look to pass on in terms of birthing experiences to your children?
I would imagine they have a really positive view of birth because they saw their brothers and sisters be born. A couple of them may have missed a couple births if they were asleep or whatever, but most of them have seen at least a couple siblings be born. My oldest daughter is a photographer, so she's photographed other home births of clients of mine. So she has seen more births than, most women ever will in their life. Yeah, it's interesting as she is like an adult now, just hearing her talk about her future in that way. And I think there's always that unknown before you have a baby or before you're pregnant. It's just so mysterious, even if you've seen other women do it. So I'm really glad they've seen it. It's very normalized. Having a baby at home is just really the only thing I think they would probably consider. And even my sons, they have seen the same thing. They've seen placentas, they've seen blood, they've seen it all. And it's just kind of their normal life. So I guess we'll see how that affects them in the future. But it feels like a pretty good foundation at the moment.
And in your motherhood experience, what are some things that your children have taught you about birth, life, and general lessons that
Oh, man.
they've taught you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna write a book on that, actually. My husband and I have a new podcast called Raising 10 Kids. People can go check that out if they wanna hear more about these sorts of things. But, I think everything they come with, in a sense, is a lesson for us. Although, that's not the only reason they come. They have their own soul path. As the mother, we're the vessel, right? We grow them, we feed them, we care for them, but they're not really ours. I think that's an important lesson, and sometimes a hard feeling one, but often that brings relief to me in certain ways. I'm not here to control them. I'm here to just witness who they are and help the best I can with discovering what that is. Because with 10 kids, well, even with two or 10 doesn't matter. Kids are so different from each other. They're different in every way. The pregnancies are different. They're born under different signs. They have different things they like. So that has been fun with the older kids, just kind of seeing where does their life want to take them and how can we do our best to just let that unfold. And so much of what we've been taught by them is that they have the tools that they need. So we don't do, traditional schooling at home. And there's a lot of like weird and, wacky and radical things we've probably done over the years to just support them rather than try to make them into something that we think they should be. And the school system, for one, is something we feel that does that. So we've always kept them out of that. And, I think really the way we've parented and the lessons that have come to us have really come directly from them. I think when souls choose to incarnate here, they're very clear on who they want and for what reason. And, again, they're not babies, like they appear as babies and we do need to care for them, but they're highly evolved souls that already know what they're here for. So really it's getting out of the way. And it's so much like birth in that respect. We don't need to control it, but we need to hold boundaries. So, I think there is the container of safety we can make as mothers, and that is our job. And within that container of feeling safe, a kid can really blossom into who they are. So my oldest kids, the two oldest in particular, do their own thing. My oldest son is a musician, just doing what he does and really doing amazing. It's nothing that we taught him. It's nothing we pushed him towards. It's nothing that we laid out for him. He knows a million things I don't know, and not even just technical stuff, but, like, how he wants his life to unfold and how he already realizes these profound lessons that have taken us years to learn. Like, working harder doesn't mean you make more money. Like, he's living that from this very sincere place inside of him. So, I think kids are always there to teach us, and sometimes they're frustrating lessons, and sometimes they're triggering. They really bring stuff out in us that we need to look at. And that is what being a parent is. It's not always, as we all know, rainbows and unicorns. It doesn't always feel good because our kids can really be our mirrors. and show us where we need to grow up, and it's usually seen the other way. It's like, oh, this kid needs to grow up. And in this culture, right, everybody's concerned with the independence, even of a baby, which is insane. Like, to me, intuitively, as a young mother, even, I didn't understand what the rush was to get this baby away from me. My own mother would be like, why do you hold her so much? Because that's what a newborn needs, But the instincts over the generations and for different reasons, I think, have been cut off. And it became this kind of thing of like, to be a mother meant you lost yourself and you really have to get this all in order and control this child and all these things. Whereas I think these kids have shown me that this is my life path. It's not separate from my life path. It's not like I have my life over here and like, oh, I better go mother them because they are my kids. They are also why I'm here. So it's been really a beautiful experience. Again, not that it doesn't have moments from day to day, especially with little kids, but yeah, I think they are our teachers for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that perspective, and it's something that, I feel that there is, some greater plan and vision, and they do, know what they're getting into, and they know who their parents are gonna be and what that is all gonna kind of, like, pan out and roughly kind of align and be like, but yeah, it's such a unique and different perspective, but I think it's nice to know when you have that perspective, those, like, little moments that can be more frustrating just are easier to kind of navigate. But, yeah, I think it's just, like, there's so much there that can really be learned from our kids and when we see them as teachers as well, not just us always teaching them.
Yeah, I it's a really arrogant perspective. I feel like people that resonates with, just take a step back and consider how much conditioning went into your own life around that. That you needed to be taught, that you had to learn these certain things you didn't care about learning. And ask yourself, are you a better person for having been put in that box? And most adults I've talked to have said no. They don't remember anything they've learned. They were maybe resentful of having to do a thing. And my question is, why don't we just treat children like equals in a sense? Again, not that we can't have boundaries. They are children in the bodies that they're in, yes. But I mean with respect. I mean respect in the same way that, I would talk to you. You meet someone and you don't just put them down and tell them what they're doing wrong and how they could do something better, which is how a lot of people treat children, especially again in the school system, which can really set people up for a whole life of issues. So, yeah, I think our kids are ready and willing to show us, but we've got to again get out of the way and sort of get out of our egos that just because we're older in our bodies that we know more. In fact, I would say for sure they're more evolved than us probably in many ways.
Well, what is one final, piece of advice, something that you wish a new mom should know who's, maybe either trying to conceive, currently pregnant, or in that freshly, newly postpartum stage?
It's easy to say trust your instincts. I do mean that, but I think there's a lot for people to uncover when they consider something like that. I would still say trust your instincts. There's nobody that knows better than you do about your own body and for your baby. But I will admit there's a lot of things in the way of most women really connecting with that and not doubting that. But I think that's also the journey of motherhood for many of us. We don't come into this getting it. We didn't see that modeled for us. So for many women, in my generation and the generations coming up, that is the challenge. How can I get back to the wisdom that I know I hold? Because that's where it all lives. And if we can't do that or don't do that, then it feels like things will just continue in some ways down the road they've been, which is a lot of disconnected people, mothers that are really, really struggling and don't have support. So it's not blaming anyone for any of that. But if people decided to look within themselves, we could start just in a little bit, try to clear up some of these things.
Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and giving us some insights on, what you're doing in the birth community and how can we reach you, get in contact with you? What kinds of things do you have going on?
So my website is maryngreen.co, not com, .co. And I do offer virtual sessions for pregnant women and mothers in all kinds of ways and sort of whatever anybody is needing, plus somatic work. So people can check out sessions there. My podcast is called Taking Back Birth, and that is an 11, almost 12-year-old podcast. So there's many, 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 many episodes. The new podcast I have is called Raising 10 Kids, and that's with my husband. And indiebirth.org is the main indie birth site where you can just check out other things and doula trainings and birth work stuff.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, mamas, so much for listening. Remember, you are a rock star. I believe in you. Let's doula this. Let's crank it up a notch and let's kick it into high gear together. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, message me, email me, call me, beat me. You know how to reach me. We're doing this, mamas. I am so excited to catch you here next week. This is your one-stop go-to place for helping you find the resources you need to make the best choices for you and your family during pregnancy, birth, and most importantly, postpartum. See you later, mamas.